This video is sponsored by Card Kingdom. You can visit their store by using my referral link in the description below. Hi everyone, I'm Nizzahon, and it's Monday, and that means it's time for another MTG Top 10, the series where I rank cards based on their historical performance at Magic's highest level of competition. Over the years, I've looked at a lot of creature stat lines, but there's still a ton that I haven't done, and today we're looking at another one with 4 mana 4/4 is the topic of this video. 4 mana for a 4/4 is fairly efficient, but on its own, it isn't really anything special, especially these days. However, it isn't a bad place to start for a creature, as you usually just need to give it a few other abilities or keywords and it suddenly becomes a pretty nice card. To be eligible for this list, a card had to have a mana value of 4, power equal to 4, and toughness equal to 4. In all, there are 161 cards that meet this requirement, and in this video, we'll take a look at the 10 that have left the biggest impact on competitive Magic. Before we get started, here's a quick reminder on how I score cards in these videos. A first tier top 8 is worth 2 points, and that's for huge events like World Championships, Set Championships, and Pro Tours. A second tier top 8 is worth 1 point, and those come from events like Grand Prix and Magic Fests. Before we jump into the list, I want to tell you about this video's special sponsor, Ridge Wallet. Somehow I've made it 33 years into my life with a pretty large wallet in my back pocket, and I can't tell you how much happier I am to have this much more minimalist wallet. This might look small, but it can hold all your cash and cards without taking up very much space. It's also far easier to get your cards and cash out of than a normal wallet. There's lots of sweet designs on these Ridge wallets too. This one was my favorite one, and it's called Forged Ember. It's got a very cool sort of black and red thing going on, but you can find a lot of other designs in their store. I highly recommend the Ridge wallet for yourself or as a gift, and you can buy one by clicking on my unique link in the description. Remember to put the coupon code Nizzahon in when you're checking out, and you'll get a 10% discount. And you don't have anything to lose either, because they give you 45 days to try out the wallet, and if you don't like it, you can send it back and get a full refund. Alright, let's get to the list. At number 10, it's Chameleon Colossus. This 4 mana 4/4 comes with Changeling, which means it has all the creature types, which can be pretty nice in tribal decks. In addition to that, it also has protection from black and the ability to double its power and toughness. If you have 4 mana, it can be an 8/8, but if you have 8, it can be a 16/16, and that's without any other boosts. It was played a lot in block and standard, including in tribal decks like Treefolk, Elves, and Merfolk. The card would be really nice even if it wasn't a Changeling, so cashing in on its tribal value feels great. It has also been played a fair bit in Modern, mostly as a sideboard card to bring in against black decks. It's appeared in decks like Elves, Birthing Pod Jund, Scapeshift, and Amulet Titan in that format. It hasn't gained a ton of points lately though, with only 2 since 2016. Granted, they did come in just in the last year, so maybe it will gain more points in the future. At number 9, it is Gore Clan Rampager. This 4 mana 4/4 comes with Trample, which is fine, but more importantly can also be a pretty nice combat trick thanks to Blood Rush. A red and a green for +4/+4 and Trample is a pretty big boost that often results in the creature winning combat and inflicting significant damage on the opposing player. While playing it as a creature isn't the most exciting thing ever, it is nice that it has that additional mode, especially in situations where playing the trick won't really do anything for you. In Standard, it was a fixture in Naya, Jund, and Gruul aggro decks. Then, after not seeing play since rotating, in 2016 it started to see play in Modern Death's Shadow decks which ran the eponymous creature Death's Shadow, and sought to rapidly lower their life total and use combat tricks to one-shot the opponent, and Gore Clan Rampager could help with that by giving Trample and a huge power boost. More recently, it's found success in Pioneer Gruul aggro decks, and it's likely to continue to gain points going forward. At number 8, it is Lockheed Hierarch. This 4 mana 4/4 gains you 4 life when it comes down, and it can also give itself up to regenerate all of your creatures. That's some nice upside to have on a reasonably efficient creature. If you're in a more mid-range or controlling deck, its size and the life you gain can help you stabilize, and if you're an aggro deck playing it at the top of your curve, you can use it to help save your board from a sweeper. Its usefulness in multiple archetypes led to it seeing significant play in block, standard, and extended. It's also gained a single point in Modern Birthing Pod and another point in Legacy Survival of the Fittest. Both of those decks are all about tutoring things up, and grabbing the Hierarch in the right situation can be pretty nice. Despite all that success, it's only gained 2 points since 2009 and hasn't gained a single point since 2014. Its spot on this list may be in trouble. At number 7, it is Mistbind Click, a 4 mana 4/4 with both flying and flash, which is a great deal. Now, the click does require you to champion a fairy, which means you have to exile one when it enters the battlefield, but that price is well worth it. Not only do you get a huge flyer for the cost, you also get the ability to tap down the opposing player's lands. This means you can flash it in on their upkeep and get pretty close to time walking them. This was one of many fairies that were simultaneously disruptive and aggressive, and that's what made fairies so good for so long in multiple formats. And while the click making you give up a fairy might sound like it's all downside, there's also a bit of upside to be had. If your opponent kills the click, you get back the creature that you championed. This means it's hard for your opponent to ever come out ahead against this powerful creature. However, fairy decks haven't really found any success since 2012. At number 6, it is Questing Beast, a 4-mana 4/4 that has an infamously full text box with all kinds of abilities. It has haste, vigilance, and death touch, and that's pretty challenging to deal with. You can't just sit back and let it hit you and try to race because of vigilance. Because it has haste, it's often going to attack the turn it comes down, and death touch means that if you want to kill it, you're going to have to use a card or two. This is all augmented by the good stats, the fact it can't be blocked by small creatures, the fact that damage from it can't be prevented, and the fact that it lets you go after planeswalkers when you do combat damage to an opponent. Questing Beast has already been played in multiple formats, and that's part of why it's been able to put up 53 points, despite being significantly newer than the other cards on this list. It's turned out to be well suited for aggro decks in Standard, Pioneer, Historic, Modern, and Legacy, and it's likely to continue to gain points and is pretty likely to move up this list in the future. At number 5, it is Nightpack Ambusher, a 4-mana 4/4 with Flash that's also a Wolf and Werewolf Lord. That's great and all, but what really makes it powerful is its ability to churn out creature tokens. Once it's in play, it's just going to be best not to cast things, since a free 3/3 Wolf is a big deal, especially if your deck is mostly cards that you're not going to be casting on your turn anyway. If that's the case, you're not really giving anything up. And while it was in Standard, it was filled with decks that wanted to do exactly that. This has included decks like Wilderness Reclamation, which spend lots of turns just pumping their excess mana into powerful activated abilities, so the Ambusher will be making some wolves there too. It's also been played in Simic Flash decks where it fits in nicely for obvious reasons. It has gained points much more slowly since it rotated out of Standard, but it did gain a few points in Pioneer Wilderness Reclamation decks before the card was banned out of the format in early 2021, and it has transitioned into being played in Temur Flash decks there. It's also seeing a bit of play in Modern Control decks. It's likely to continue to add to its score, though it isn't doing it at a very fast rate. At number 4, it's Masticore. By today's standards, this 4-mana 4/4 might not look too impressive, but it was once one of the game's most powerful creatures. For one thing, 4-mana 4/4s weren't particularly common back then. It was a great rate at the time. So great that it also came with an ability that makes you discard a card every upkeep or sacrifice the Masticore. It does come with some upside though, including the ability to regenerate and ping creatures. It was colorless, so it could slot into any deck, and it pretty much did when it was in Standard. It showed up in decks as wildly different from one another as Mono Green Stompy and Mono Blue Control. It also saw some play in more artifact-centric decks, especially decks that like to discard cards anyway, so they could reanimate powerful artifacts, and the supposed downside here could help enable that. It was also pretty prolific and extended, gaining points in a wide variety of decks there too, including Blue-Green Madness, which could really turn the downside of this card into pure upside too. Obviously, creature power creep has been pretty real in this game, and as a result, Masticore doesn't have any points since 2005. There are just way better options out there these days, but it accumulated enough points during its peak that it's pretty unlikely it will ever fall off of this list. At number 3, it is Thrun, the Last Troll. This 4-mana 4/4 is pretty hard to deal with. He can't be countered, he has hexproof, and he can regenerate. This just makes Thrun an all-around good creature, and that's what it was in Standard, where it saw mainboard play in a number of different green decks. In Modern, it's been more of a sideboard card that can be brought in against opponents playing counter magic. It's been played in the sideboards of decks like the Rock, Junk, Jund, and Birthing Pod. It even has a few points in Legacy, though it hasn't earned any points in that format since 2018, or any format for that matter. It's hard to assume that it won't ever gain more points though, just because of the track record. At number 2, it is Obstinate Bailoth. On the face of it, the Bailoth is quite similar to Lockheed Hierarch. Both are 4-mana 4/4s that gain you 4 life after all. But the Bailoth trades in the Regenerate ability for the ability to be put into play for free if your opponent makes you discard it. That, plus the fact that it's monocolored, has led to it seeing significantly more play than the Hierarch ever has. Discard effects show up pretty often in many formats, and this is definitely one of the best ways to punish an opponent for using them. and the cost of running this hate card in your main deck isn't even that high since it's just a solid creature anyway. As a result, it has really been a multi-format all-star, gaining points in Standard, Extended, Modern, and Legacy. It's likely to continue to gain points going forward, especially in Modern. However, it's unlikely that it will ever catch the number 1 card on this list, which is Thought Not Seer. A 4-mana 4/4 might be a bit small by Eldrazi standards, but this one makes up with it for a very powerful enter the battlefield ability. It lets you look at your opponent's hand and take away any non-land card, and that card stays exiled. And yeah, it's true that if the Seer dies, you're going to draw a card, but you're basically always going to be coming out ahead, since a random card from the top of their deck is almost always going to be worse than whatever you took away from them. Thought Not Seer has gained points in every single format it's been legal in, which tells you a lot about how good it is. That said, it gets an extra power-up in non-standard formats as a result of the Eldrazi creature type, which means you can use both Eye of Ugin and Eldrazi Temple to get the Seer down way earlier than turn 4, allowing you to get this big creature down much earlier in the game. Eye of Ugin ended up being banned in Modern because it made the Eldrazi decks too good. Even after that banning in Modern though, the Seer has continued to see play in Eldrazi Tron decks, which combine the Tron lands with Eldrazi Temple. Both the Eye and the Temple are still legal in Legacy and Vintage, and that means Thought Not Seer, and Eldrazi decks more generally, are still really great in those formats. Thought Not Seer will be the number 1 card on this list for the foreseeable future. Well, those are the 10 4-mana 4/4s that have left the biggest impact on competitive Magic. If you want to own any of these cards, check out the description, where you can find a direct Card Kingdom link for every card that made the list. If you enjoyed this video, please like it and share it so that others can enjoy it too. If you want to make sure you catch future episodes of this series and all of my other content, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. If you want to catch up on older episodes of this series, including many more on creatures' stat lines, you should see some playlists on your screen shortly. Lastly, if you want to go the extra mile in supporting the channel, you can on Patreon. Thanks for watching.